talk about modding your rat to get it to sound like a life pedal. It's not going to be all the bells and whistles of a regular life pedal, but it's going to get the core of what a life pedal is inside of a rat. So we're going to put an analog octave inside of the battery bay, wire it up, and we'll see how it sounds. I got this from Inverted Cross Audio. There are many cool mods you can do to do the same thing, but basically this is an analog octave. I think it's like a green ringer, and it's nice that you can kind of just chuck this in, wire it up, and with one tiny hole in your rat, you can add a switch in to modify it to sound like a life pedal. So let's give it a go. Okay, so we're going to start out here by removing these three knobs here, and if you have the feet on, which I do not, these 4 screws, you're going to yank those out too. So let's do it. The knobs I have don't have a set screw on them. Sometimes you'll get knobs that have a little screw you can unscrew from the side. These ones, these just pull off, so you can just yank and they'll pop right off because that's the way they're built. Once we get those screws out, we can just pop this off. There we go. There's a little zip tie right here, kind of making it hard for me to see where wires are going, so I'm going to go ahead and snip that. Next up, I'm just going to take these little nuts off of these dinguses here, and I'm going to try and get this board out right here. So with all this stuff, we're going to need to desolder and resolder some stuff here, and I think it might just be easier if you have the extra pieces to just go ahead and replace them. So I'm going to go ahead and replace the foot switch because it'll be a black foot switch and that'll look cool. The power input jack, I'm going to get rid of this right here because I don't need it. Obviously I'm not going to be able to fit a battery inside there, and I never use batteries anyway for my board. And I'm going to replace these 2 input jacks. They can just be TS jacks, tip and sleeve, rather than TRS, tip ring sleeve, because you're not going to need this sort of switch jack output, even though I am using a switch jack. You're not going to need the 3rd connection on your input jack there. So I'm going to replace these 4 things here. And that's just going to make it a little cleaner, and I can just kind of do things without having to make a big mess desoldering everything. So I've got these unscrewed right here, and I can start taking things out. What I'm probably going to do is I'm just going to start clipping things and replacing things as I go. Something new I'm going to be adding is this on-on switch. I believe it is a DPDT, something like that. Yeah. The kit from Inverted Cross comes with one, but I'm not going to use it because I have a black one, and that's way cooler. Okay, the first thing I'm going to snip, just so that I can get some things out of here properly, is this DC jack right here. So I'm just going to snip all the wires, just kind of making note of where everything is going to and from and all that. And then, yeah, it's good to definitely make sure and take some pictures before you get in here, because otherwise it's going to be hard to remember where everything goes. But first things first, I'm just going to snip this so I can pull this whole board out of here. The first one I snipped was the one kind of down there. This is the positive lead to the battery snap. Again, I'm not going to use that. And the other end of that ends up going into this input jack here. So I'm not going to worry about that because I'm going to tear that whole thing out. The next bit here that I'm going to snip is this positive lead that goes to the board right here. So this goes into here, and then if we're looking at this thing, you can always get the orientation later from this, but you can kind of tell from the ground wire which is which once you start lining up a new power jack inside there. You know, each one of these pins on here, if this is oriented the same exact way. So this is the ground wire right here that we're going to use that's going to both those jacks on their ground. And this right here is the positive lead that's going to go into the board right here. So I'm going to snip that, and then we're going to be able to start yanking things out. I'll probably snip these two ground wires. Those are easy to remember. Again, ground goes to this one right here, and then it goes to the sleeve of your input and output jacks, with this weird looking wire right here. Now that I've got those wires loose, I should be able to just kind of unscrew this thing. So I'm going to do that real quick. Next up, I'm going to install the switch that turns on the octave up. That is this right here. Probably going to do it right above this 9-volt DC label right here for symmetry and ease of access. So wish me luck. Before I do any drilling, I like to use one of these little punches right here. What you do is you kind of like press down on something, and then it just kind of like has a spring-loaded mechanism inside there that will just smash this little point down on here and give me a really nice starting point in here. So I'll do that first. I'll try and eyeball getting this centered here, and then we'll take it from there. Usually a good way to line this up is just looking at the holes. So there's a hole back here, there's a hole right here, there's even a center line right here. So lots of reference points in order to just get yourself right in the right spot here. So let's give that a go. Okay, that's a pretty good starting point right there. Now I'm going to drill that into a big enough hole to fit this sucker through. It's good to start small and then work your way up to larger drill bits from there. Probably won't need too big of a drill bit to get to the final size, but let's get started. Okay, so once you get your hole drilled through with a big enough drill bit to fit this thing through, you may need to just clean off some of the excess plastic. This whole thing is just like printed plastic. It's almost like a big sticker, and so you might have some excess. Just go in with a knife and kind of clean out the hole a little bit, and then you can slide that puppy through. Not bad, right? There it is. You're going to make sure it's kind of facing sideways like that so that the switch goes like this. So the next thing I'm going to focus on is replacing this 3-pole double throw jack. You'll notice that the lugs are pointing vertically. They're sort of vertically oriented like this rather than like this. And so you want to keep that orientation just to make things way easier for your brain. It is kind of weird that this slot ends up sticking out to the side. That's uncommon, but you know, whatever. It's fine. We'll make do. So I'm just going to go ahead and start clipping these as close as I can get to the 3-pole double throw switch lugs here. And then I'm just going to trim back this a little bit and kind of replace these one by one, with the exception of a few things here. One is going to be, I'm going to, instead of cutting from this side on this one, I'm actually going to cut from the other side and try and desolder that input right there. And that is because that is something I'm actually going to insert in between to my jack, which is this thing, for the purposes of inserting this bad boy into the mix here. So, and I'm also reconsidering whether or not I'm going to replace these. I might not need to. I might do it. We'll see how it goes. Part of the adventure. All right, the first wire I'm going to replace is actually this goofy little yellow wire down here that runs from this bottom left lug here, and it goes kind of around here, and it goes to this top right lug here. So I'm just going to do that real quick so I don't have to do it later. It'll look a little bit, it'll be a little bit easier. So, and it's also just nice to start eliminating these different cables. So there's less to be like, oh, which one goes where? You know, just one at a time. So I'm going to strip back the wire on either end of this so I can fit it through. I'll leave the sleeving on in the middle just so it doesn't accidentally touch this middle lug here. Otherwise, I would just leave it bare wire. Hi there, this is Future Jesse. Don't solder the top right lug that I showed you yet, because there's actually 2 wires that need to be soldered there. So don't do that. I'm sorry. We'll keep going though. One thing that's kind of nice is you can use your rat as a place to kind of solder this thing, hold this thing still. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to solder both these lugs in here and then I'll clip off the excess there. So now I think I'm going to see if I can desolder this middle guy right here and this guy right here and pull it through so I can reuse it, because it's going down to the board here. That's just a ground. And if I can't, that's okay. I'll just redo it, but I'm going to see if I can do that. So what I'll do is I'll heat those 2 up, those 2 points, and then I'll try and suck them up with this solder sucker, like that. And let's see if I can free this little funky wire here. Okay, so I was able to get that wire pulled out just by heating up that center pin and that corner pin right there, and just sucking the solder out and yanking it through. So I won't have to redo that one, so that's really nice. So now I'm probably going to start clipping wires here off of this and just replacing them one by one. And I'm ultimately going to unscrew this from the bottom side and pop the new one in there, and we'll see how we do. So the only 3 that are really connected to the board here still are this one, which is foot switch to board. There's this one over here, which is I believe it's an LED jack, and then this one, which is the board to the foot switch. So I'm going to go ahead and clip all 3 of those at the solder lugs as close as I can. With those clipped, I'll just go ahead and unscrew this real quick. And now I'm going to slide my new foot switch in like this, with this sort of orientation right here. Alright, with this new foot switch in, I'm just going to slide this ground wire back in over here, down through the middle lug right here. Let's see how I do. That's gone in just fine, and so now I'm going to start stripping back some of these wires. I have to figure out which one of these needs to go to the switch again, so I'll take a look at that. I might need to remove this one, but I'm not 100% sure, so let's find out. Okay, so next up, I need to replace the board input wire. So that's this white wire along the top right here. So you need to flip this over and find the other side of it, like the actual pin for this thing. So if I flip this over, the pin for this one, you can see this thing coming through, is this guy right here where my fingernail is pointing, that one. So I'm going to desolder that connection, pull that wire out, and then I'm going to replace it with this longer wire right here. So that's what's next. Okay, so now I've got my very long board input wire replaced in there. I'm going to solder this guy in here, this guy, back in this guy. I'm going to desolder this because actually this needs to hook up to something else. I'm going to solder this and solder this, but I just need to add one other connection right here, and I'll do that in just a second. So I've desoldered this, so it's got a nice little hole through there in the top right hand corner. I should be able to poke a wire through there. Looking at the old 3-pole double throw foot switch, this is the input jack. So this is the positive lead from the input jack, and that one is going to go into this top right hand corner. So what I'm going to do is snip it off of here. I've decided I will just keep reusing these, and yeah, we'll snip this off, strip it back a little bit, and then pop it in that top right corner. Alright, next up I'm going to take this blue wire that goes down to the positive end of the output jack, and I'm going to put it into the corresponding spot in this bottom middle slot right here on my new switch. So I'll snip this, strip it, and hook it in right there. Alright, and so this pin right here is actually going to come from our little switch that we put at the top of this guy right here. it's going to come back in over here. Or actually, it's actually going out from here into the switch and then into the board via this white wire right here. And so next up, we're just going to, now that we have all these wires in, we've got our input jack, our output jack, and our input jack here. Then, yeah, we should start putting this thing back together, and then we'll get the actual unit soldered in here. One thing that's easy to forget before you put this board back in this enclosure is to put all the things that kind of go on this side of the board back on. And so what I'll do, I'll put this little guy on. I like to put those on the inside because they look quite ugly on the outside. And then there's all these little guys as well that need to go on here as well. So don't forget those. Okay, so I've got that extra long wire that I replaced right here that goes to the board. So I'm going to put that in the furthest back pin right here, and then I'm running another just bare wire from this pin to the bottom left pin right here, like that. So next up, I need to connect this pin right here, which I accidentally snipped a little bit, to the foot switch, which is going to go on that one right there. So let's do that. Alright, so now from the foot switch, top center lug here, I have going to the top center lug of my toggle switch right here, and I'm going to hook onto these two the greener octave effect, at least two of the wires here, so it's actually going to be the green and white wires that I hook in. The green wire is going to go into the top lug here, and the white wire is going to go into the bottom lug. And this wire that comes out the bottom goes back into the board and into the regular rat distortion from there. So that's how that works. Next up, I'm going to put this new power jack in here. I like this orientation, so I'm just going to screw that screw on real quick, and then we'll start connecting up the lugs for everything here. Okay, so now that I've got that power jack in, I'm going to stick these suckers in here as well. This is the input jack. The input jack kind of goes into the board on this side. And I have these little groundy boys right here that are going to connect to the power supply. I ended up leaving those on. Ended up not replacing these input and output jacks. So that should do it. I'll just pop these both in here real quick. Here's the other one. It hooks into the bottom of your 3-pole double throw down there. Let's do it. Okay, so now I'm going to begin wiring up the power jack in here. This funky looking bent pin on the bottom, that one is your ground, and the one opposite that one, up top here, that is your positive. This one we're not using at all. That one you're only using in case of battery power. So we're going to ignore that one completely. But we have our positive lead right here. That one needs to go to the top bit up here. We also have a positive lead from this little unit, and just checking the instructions real quick. The positive lead is the red one. That makes perfect sense. And the negative lead is the black one. I don't know why the positive one on this board is black, but to each their own, I guess. So we'll connect this one up to the bent ground wire as well, this one to the positive. And we're also going to take these two goofy looking metal wires that are coming off of the grounds of the jacks, and we'll connect that to the bent tab ground here as well. So lots going to the ground, about 4 cables, and 2 cables going to the positive. Alright, so it was actually only 3 ground wires. It's the 2 jacks, and it was also the external unit, or this unit over here. And then there's just the 2 positive leads as well. Those are in. Sorry, it's a little tight in there, but again, just not using that middle lug right there, not needing it. And I think we can button this up and test it. Okay, so you might want to re-zip tie a couple of these things here just to keep things organized, and we will put the back piece on here and let's see how it sounds. Okay, so aesthetically, actually this is looking pretty nice. I've got a black switch, a white jack back here which matches a little better, and another black foot switch here. Very, very happy. Still got to see if it works. I've got the pedal back on my board now. Let's give it a listen without the mod on real quick. That's it. We'll flip it on. That's it. Sounds pretty good. So if you like this, check out Inverted Cross Audio. You can get these mods from them. They're in Spain. There's lots of other green ringer style octaves that you can plug into life pedals as well. I know the Zero Fret does a mod like this as well, which is where I originally got the idea. Just wasn't able to catch the seasonality of when those mods are being done. So I decided to do it myself. So anyway, I hope this helps. If you're looking to do this mod, it's super fun. And it's nice to have a much more compact version of the life pedal on your board. It can be pretty big, or it can be really expensive. So just nice to have it in a smaller bit there. So enjoy. Again, don't give a fuck if you like or subscribe. Just live your life. I don't need it. We're okay. See ya.